Exactly 1 week ago today, on Friday, May 2nd, 2025, a 2016 Ford Focus embarked on a rage-fueled voyage of vengeance. The driver, a bitter and angry man whose name I will never speak, buckled himself into the driver's seat and piloted that vehicle east on Martin Luther King Drive. This sedan of destruction was on a collision course with an emblem of law and order. This vehicle, like a bullet that had already left the barrel, was loose in our community. On a mission of mayhem, the only target was a police officer. Any police officer. It did not matter to the hate-filled driver who. It only mattered that it be a law enforcement officer, a crime fighter, a peacemaker, a symbol of the very structure of our society. Cincinnati, Norwood, Delhi, Springfield Township, or even the Highway Patrol. The shape and inscription of the badge did not matter. The color of his shirt did not matter, nor the style of his hat. The only thing that mattered to this murderer was that those that wear the badge feel the pain. On that particular day, Deputy Larry Ray Henderson did not purposefully choose to be at the end of that collision course, a mere 4 miles from where we sit now. Yet, in a way, through the choices that he had made over the past 57 years, he did choose to be standing there near that busy crosswalk, proudly wearing that badge that had put him in harm's way for 34 years. That black Ford Focus was hurtling down the street, headed for someone in uniform. Someone wearing a badge, and Larry was there. He was there faithfully doing his job, fulfilling the role of public servant, protecting his community and his brothers and sisters. Just like he had done since he was a teenager, taking a position in the line of fire so that others did not have to, facing what we all fear so that others could be safe and free. There is no doubt that on May 2nd, 2025, Larry took the place of another officer. He may have taken that place for me, or you, or anyone in this room. His sacrifice reminds me of another well-known story of sacrifice. A man I know well made a similar choice to take my place a long time ago and much farther away. This great man was quoted saying these words, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friend." As I reflected on Larry's final day of service, I realized that that is exactly what he did for all of us in law enforcement. As I mused over his life of sacrifice, I saw one parallel after another. Larry has more in common with this great man than some of you may think. It is my deepest hope that they're hanging out right now as we speak. Of course, the man I'm speaking of is not just a man. You can look that story up yourself or ask me later and I'd be happy to tell you about it. Even though his final act of sacrifice took place 6,000 miles from here, almost 2,000 years ago, I'm happy to say I know him well, and I'd be happy to tell you his name. If you have the time, I could even introduce you. But today is about Larry. In fact, Larry Henderson is the only name you will hear from me this morning. Larry dedicated his life to service and making sacrifices. I will do my best to paint a picture of that life, or at least a collage of the stories that you have told me and my own experiences. When I was asked to speak, I was humbled beyond words. Like many others on patrol, Larry trained me in the academy. I worked alongside him, and I considered him a good friend. There are many here today who knew Larry better than me. Shot more sim rounds, kicked in more doors, defused more bombs, went on more cruises, and drank more beers with Larry than I ever could have. I reached out to a few for some stories and anecdotes, and within a few hours, I had enough to do a mini-series. There's not enough time to tell you even half the stories about Larry, but we will hit the high points, and I encourage you to talk to one another. Tell your own stories, share your memories, and listen to the memories of others. I have no doubt that Larry's larger-than-life persona can live on indefinitely through the memories he made with us. Larry grew up in Marymount. In high school, he ran track, wrestled, and played football. As with anything he did in life, I'm sure he put everything he had into it. No doubt, making number 34 the fastest running back on the team was his ultimate mission. After graduating high school in 1985, he followed the military tradition of his father and grandfather by enlisting in the United States Marine Corps. Most of the men in his family were Marines, or maybe I should say most of the Marines in his family were men. Larry's sister expressed her disappointment that her father would not permit her to enlist in the Marines. She had to marry one just to fit in. In the Marines, the values of the Marine Corps were further instilled in Larry: courage, honor, courage, and commitment. These values and the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, perfectly sums up his approach to life and work. In 1991, after his time in the Marines, Larry joined the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office as a corrections officer. He never accepted good enough or became stagnant in his career. He constantly sought out ways to provide additional service to his department and community. One of the first ways he did that was by volunteering for the Sheriff's Honor Guard. Throughout his entire career, Larry was always clean-shaven, his uniform crisply pressed, his shoes and leather goods polished and glossy black. The myriad of pins and medals he wore were perfectly aligned, brightly shining, and buffed to an absolute luster. Larry always looked sharp in uniform, which is why I was so shocked in December 2024 when he inquired of me about a no-shave status for his career as a special deputy. Although shocked, I replied with my customary response: "If you type and sign it, I'll send it." The letter never came through, and to this day, I don't know if he was serious or not, but I never saw him out of uniform at work or out of compliance with our grooming standards. Even as the inevitable march of time took its unavoidable toll, he kept his uniform in top order. Larry's activities did shift a bit over the years, from track and football to basic training, academy instructor, SWAT team, and finally onto a workload that, well, let's just say was slightly more relaxed. As he spent more time doing things like hospital security and school traffic control, Larry's fitness goals slowly transitioned also. Like most of us, he went from maintaining the peak of physical fitness to staying fit, and finally, like so many in our profession, maybe his goal was just fitness uniform. But Larry always did fit in his uniform, and he wore it well. It's okay to laugh. Larry could certainly take a joke. If he could right now, he'd be mocking my silly hooker boots and miming me on a motorcycle. That is something Larry could always do, make us smile. When he came to patrol in 1997, he began to brighten briefing rooms all across the county. Larry had a very special skill set. He could make us laugh, lighten the mood, and put us in check if we ever began to take ourselves or our jobs too seriously. His good-natured, sarcastic ribbing would have been incredibly offensive and disrespectful coming from anyone else. But when delivered with his playful smirk and smiling eyes, it usually landed soft, delivered the point, and kept all of our egos in check. Larry did not see rank when it came to his hazing. Everyone was fair game, from the rookie that made the mistake of showing up for a week with frosted tips to his poor stammering sergeant while he tried to explain the mythical 48-hour rule. You know what I'm saying. Whenever I get carried away with the administrative minutia, he was always ready with a snarky quip to realign my focus on the things that really mattered. Even the renowned commander of the Southwest Ohio Regional Sheriff's Office Bicycle Patrol Unit and assistant to the field training coordinator was not beyond a well-timed, reproachful remark to rein in any excess importance. Larry had very specific things to tease us all about. One time, the majority of the squad was involved in a use of force that ended with them holding the subject down in a very confined space. After several minutes squatting in the corner, one deputy began loudly complaining that he had been stricken with leg-paralyzing cramps. The following morning, in true Larry fashion, he arrived early for briefing and donated a banana and a new nickname for his fellow officer. Always considerate, Larry felt the potassium would help his squad mate with his cramps. And thanks to Larry, he will be known forevermore as Banana Boy. One of his favorite pastimes was to physically attack other members of the department. Casually approaching a complacent coworker when they would least expect it, he would stiffen the middle and index fingers of his right hand and loudly shout, "Snake bite!" while he delivered a forceful jab to any unprotected body part. He would then watch and laugh with sadistic glee as his victim flinched in pain. He would laugh. Then, while casting that well-known side eye, he'd slowly hum, in the most judgmental fashion imaginable. That was his style. It was very unique. Some might even say different. There is an FBI commander who ordered the drafting of a new policy after he discovered just how different Larry was. Having just been given an assignment in Huntsville, Alabama, this FBI commander was settling into his new role as the commandant of the Hazardous Devices School at Redstone Arsenal. He was no doubt proud to oversee the certification of his first class of freshly minted bomb technicians from all over the United States. Imagine how appalled he was at discovering the tradition that had sprung up within his highly esteemed educational institute. As legend has it, 2 Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies proudly stood in formation, nervously awaiting the placement of the HDU pins on their chests. Much to the commander's surprise, these new graduates were tacked with the HDU pin, a practice customary in the United States military, in which seasoned members of a branch or unit apply the newly earned rank or insignia without the backs on the pin. The sheriff's HDU pins were placed against the chests of the newly initiated members of the unit. The pins were then pounded home with such force that it pierced the skin and scarred the flesh, granting permanent membership to the eager participants. Overwhelmed with pride, the 2 new technicians shouted, "Semper Fi!" as a small crimson stain began to spread. The starched federal dignitary expressed great intrigue into this practice. The incumbent training staff tried to explain, "You see, sir, those are 2 deputies from Hamilton County. They're a little different." "Well, different or not," declared the commander, "that tradition ends here." No doubt, like any good bureaucrat, drafting the policy in his head while he spoke. Larry was one of a number of Marines that so honorably served their country, then joined the Sheriff's Hazardous Device Unit, or Bomb Squad, as it is often called. Larry loved being a bomb tech. Certified in 2001, he was the longest serving active member when he retired with 23 years on the unit. Working with explosives is dangerous, but Larry was never one to avoid danger. Larry received a divisional commendation in 2011 when he was one of the first officers on the scene of a homicide. He entered the residence to check on the victim and maintained a position inside, attempting to negotiate with the armed suspect. Due to his heroic actions, Larry earned the Medal of Valor that day. Although the delivery was delayed, the medal will rest with him forever. Not only did Larry accept dangerous jobs, he volunteered for the riskiest assignments. He served on and even led the dive team for a time, and was also a member of the HCPA SWAT team. Yet somehow, even while doing the most dangerous tasks, he always had time for a laugh or a prank. He could make fun of anything, no matter how serious or how dark, but he always got the job done, and he was always respectful. After I became a corporal in 2011, Larry was on one of the first squads I supervised. He did not have a sergeant for several months, and I was half the age of most of the squad. They all had many more years of experience than I did, but Larry always made me feel good about trying to be a supervisor. Even though he had trained me in the academy and had more than twice as many years on the road as I did, and no doubt knew more about policing than I ever will, he always treated me respectfully, especially in front of the other officers. Larry had a big personality, and he carried a lot of weight in the briefing room. Through his words and actions, he graciously shared the respect he had earned with me. I will never forget that about Larry. Even in the past few years, as the most senior officer on the squad, he never complained or made excuses. "It's all good, man," was his constant catchphrase. He was the epitome of keeping it light, keeping it positive and keeping it simple. When given a task, no matter how unpleasant, his only reply was one or two of these simple lines. "Yes, sir, no problem. I'll take care of it, sir." "Sure," or "Whatever you need, sir." I can still hear him saying that in my mind, and it is truly humbling. Deputy Henderson had a heart to help others. He could calm and de-escalate situations so subtly that many did not even remember how upset they were. As a defensive tactics instructor in the patrol academy, Larry spent many hours in the padded suit beating up other patrol officers and cadets. Accompanying him in these lessons of subordination was our irritable, now retired rangemaster, known well for his temperamental outbursts and physical corrective measures. During one heated session of pugilistic training, this ill-tempered trainer took a well-placed kneecap to the groin from a hapless cadet. As the former powerlifter raised him off the ground in a fit of rage, he began escorting him to the edge of the room. Larry, the ever-helpful problem solver, saw the trajectory of this ball of fury and calmly offered, "Hey, can I at least open the window before you throw him out?" Larry spent a great deal of time working with our training section. He also taught DARE classes and was actually considering the idea of going back to work full-time as a school resource officer. Yes, Larry was great with kids of all ages. I think mostly because he was kind of a big kid himself. After all of his children had grown up, he and his wonderful wife began the process of fostering children. In October of 2024, he joyfully declared that he had brought home his first foster child, a girl. For nearly 2 months, Larry and his wife poured their time, energy, and hearts into this little girl until, with very little warning, one day she was taken back. They immediately put their names back on the list to do it again. Selflessly, they volunteered for the toughest kids to place. Children with chemical dependence or premature births were no deterrent. In December, they took custody of a beautiful baby girl just 4 days old. At work, he showed us pictures, as proud as if she were his very own. This baby was taken back after 2 months. Almost 8 weeks to watch the changes happen, watch a baby grow, rock them to sleep, treat them like your very own, and then to have it all taken away. It takes very special people to do that over and over. Larry and his lovely bride are those very special people, caring for and prioritizing society's most helpless and innocent citizens. Again, this is the life of service and sacrifice I have been trying to tell you about today. Larry truly cared about his fellow man. He had a special knack for knowing when you were hurting or down, or even just plain tired. In the early morning hours, Larry was the man relieving the tired night shift officers. At the close of a 12 or 16-hour day, Larry could be counted on to arrive 15 to 20 minutes early, as the officers would begin sharing about the previous shift, maybe a domestic they had been on called to twice, or a suspect they had been looking for. Recognizing their fatigue, he would often cut them off and say these 5 words: "Go home, I got it." Sometimes he would flip it. Sometimes it was, "I got it, go home." But he always relieved well and very early. Larry and I worked many hours at Mercy Anderson Hospital. He often relieved me several minutes early. If I were telling him about a parking concern or an unruly patient I had been dealing with, he would simply take the radio and the key card from my hand. As he said, "Go home, I got it." If I've heard him say that once, I've heard it 100 times. What that said to me was that all the problems I thought still needed fixed were under control. All the things I'd left unfinished, he would deal with. He would address that unruly patient. He'd look for those suspects. If he got called there, he would even go back to that domestic a 3rd time. When Larry said, "Go home, I got it," we all knew that everything was going to be just fine. Through no fault of his own, Larry left a lot of things unfinished. There's a lawn that needs cut. There's a family that needs raised. There are people that need supported and cheered. Tomorrow, there will be an early morning briefing that needs a wisecrack and a laugh to get the day started. Somebody may even need a snake bite every now and then. That is on you now. It's finally our turn to relieve Larry. His shift on Earth was far too short, but it is time for him to secure. It's our job now. I hope you will join me in your hearts as we look at our brothers and sisters, Look to society's helpless and hurting. Look for the ones that Larry always looked after. We know the mission. We know the job, protect and serve. Will you finish the shift? Will you join me as I look to Larry and say, go home, I got it.